What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of fights. UFC Vegas 64 featuring a women's strawweight bout between Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos. Very high-level fight in the main event. 11 fights remain besides the main event. We did lose Jailton Almeida and Maxim Grishin at heavyweight, but we've got 11 other fights other than the main event. Not a lot of ranked competition amongst those fights, but some key betting spots I have hit, and there's a couple more I want to hit from the props perspective as well. So I'll point those out as we move through the card. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Zooming towards 500 subscribers. I can't believe each and every one of you keep on coming back week after week. It's a lot of fun to share this passion. And check out the description. I've got a promo code for BetUS Sportsbook, who I'm affiliated with, and my subscribers get Addicted to Combat 125 as a promo code for a 125 sportsbook match up to $2,500 on a first-time deposit. So this is not a mix of casino bonus and free play in the sportsbook. This is 125% free money to bet with on the sportsbook. They have competitive lines on all sports. Mostly what I care about, mixed martial arts. So check that out in the description. Addicted to Combat 125 is the code to use. And without further ado, let's break into these 12 fights. Okay, kicking off the fight night, we've got a pretty sketchy women's bantamweight fight. The first of 4 women's fights on this card. This is Ramona Pascual making her third walk to the cage, looking for her first victory. Tamiris Vidal is the newcomer to the UFC. At bantamweight here, Ramona Pascual has not fought at 135 in a few years. So she's fought Josiane Nunes, a fellow newcomer, losing a dominant decision there at 145. She lost again this year to Jocelyn Edwards at 145, a dominant decision once again where she got outstruck on the feet, pretty much tripled up on strikes to Jocelyn Edwards. No surprise there. And yeah, I mean, Pascual sometimes is able to bail herself out of harm's way with takedowns, but she's not very accurate with them, doesn't set them up extremely well. At 145, she was strong enough and big enough to maybe make them work, but she'll be down at 135 here. So she's a 6-4 fighter, the plus 130 underdog. Tamiris Vidal has the much better resume. You know, she's fought in the LFA most recently. She's fought in some other spots against, you know, like Carol Hossa in her second fight where she had her lone loss. She fought against Aylin Perez, where she also did not look very good in that fight. Aylin Perez being a newcomer to the UFC, losing to Stephanie Egger recently. And Tamiris Vidal actually beat her by disqualification. Perez kneed her in the vagina, punched in the back of the head, kneed her when she was a grounded opponent, so they gave her the win there. Didn't look to be that competitive, but Vidal can bail herself out of a bad fight with her BJJ. Her heel hooks look decent. She did win a fight by Kimura as well, and she has 3 decision wins on her record as well. So she has decent cardio to go 3 rounds. Her striking looks very basic. I give the better striking weapons to Ramona Pascual, surprisingly enough. Pascal's got very good knees in the clinch, some good kicks, and some good combinations when she can, smell blood. If she lands like a flush knee, she'll follow it up with consecutive strikes, especially when her opponents are stuck against the cage close to that clinch position. So it's whoever makes a mistake is going to lose in this fight. You know, if Pascual ends up on bottom, she could get subbed. If she makes a mistake even in top position, she could get subbed here. Vidal, could eat a knee in the clinch. She could end up on bottom off of a botched takedown attempt, and then she could just lose that round. So the unders in this fight maybe are the way to play it if you had to play it. If the under 2.5 is at, plus 120, plus 130 for a women's bantamweight fight, that might be the way to go, because I think either woman could slip up here and give up the win very quickly. But just passing on this fight, Pascal's the plus 130 underdog. I think you would need a much bigger underdog price to ever trust her to win a fight. Tamiris Vidal, minus 150, but she's very unproven so far. I'm going to take Vidal to win this fight by submission. I just think her submission game is more dangerous, and Pascual loses fights against anybody with any sort of credentials on their MMA record of any type. She only has wins generally over women who are undefeated or a negative losing record, so give me Tamiris Vidal here with very little confidence to make a debut and get a win over a very unskilled fighter in Ramona Pascual. Up next at flyweight, we've got Jake Hadley taking on Carlos Candelario. This is a fight where both guys were on the Contender Series and had strange circumstances that gave them their contract. Jake Hadley won by submission, as his signature rear naked choke is shown on his record. He has 4 rear naked chokes out of 8 wins as a pro, but he missed weight by a pound, and they still gave him the contract. Likewise, Carlos Candelario won a fight on the Contender Series, came back, lost a split decision there and actually got a contract out of that loss. So odd circumstances. Either way, they both came into the UFC and lost their debut. So Carlos Candelario just lost this year to Tatsuro Taira. Dominated 3 rounds, had his back taken for about 7 minutes of the 15-minute fight. Didn't let his hands go, fearing the takedown, and that's probably going to happen to him again here against Jake Hadley, the former Cage Warriors champion. Jake Hadley is 8-1, and he is the minus 275 favorite, so a pretty hefty favorite for being 0-1 in the UFC so far. Carlos Candelario at 31 years old, 5 years older, plus 225 favorite. Jake Hadley is just the things that worry me. He's too content with playing jiu-jitsu off of his back. He loses minutes that way, and that's ultimately what lost him against Nascimento. It wasn't only that. Nascimento also is, I believe, underrated in the grappling and the BJJ. He was able to, use some good scramble and some good submission defense, stay safe, and end up on top in some scrambles and win every single round. 3 rounds to 1. 3 rounds to 0, 30-27 victory for Nascimento unanimously. But Jake Hadley's got a pretty good southpaw striking pace, pressures forward, tries to get his opponents back to the cage. He'll shoot the double leg and, eventually take their back. Probably going to happen against Carlos Candelario. Again, I think the money line should be closer, so it's hard for me to play Jake Hadley here. Maybe you could look for the submission prop if it's priced appropriately when that drops. I'm going to expect by round 2, Hadley can get the submission here. Candelario is able to probably overwhelm Jake Hadley with some striking if he let all of his skills go and just sprawled and brawled, but he's so timid and is just afraid of getting taken down because every fight he gets taken down quite a bit. Even the Contender Series first match he won, he was taken down, I want to say like upwards of 6 times in that fight, so probably going to happen very similarly to the Tatsuro Taira fight. I think Jake Hadley has those skills and is probably going to be improving at 26, so give me Jake Hadley pretty confidently here, but not confidently enough to pay almost a 3-1 price tag on this guy who's pretty unproven at the UFC level so far. Up next, another bantamweight bout, this time in the men's division between Johnny Munoz Jr. and Ludovic Sholinian. This is a battle between 2 grapplers here. Both guys size up pretty well, 5'9" for Munoz Jr., 5'10" for Ludovic Sholinian. Sholinian is the Ukrainian wrestling champion who had a pretty soft resume as far as, the level of competition goes before going into the Ultimate Fighter where he was 1-1 in those exhibitions. He had his debut against Jack Shore where he lost pretty dominantly, but that's a tough test. So Sholinian finds himself as the plus 185 underdog going into his second UFC fight. This will be the 4th UFC fight for Johnny Munoz Jr., who's the minus 215 favorite. And I kind of agree with the line. I think there's question marks of both guys that make me not want to touch either side here. Sholinian could very well be a live underdog in this bout. But again, grappler versus grappler, you got to go back to who's the better striker in case the grappling nullifies itself and they don't want to actually go into each other's arena of expertise. Johnny Munoz Jr. way more comfortable striking, light on his feet. Not like an elite striker by any means, but he's got decent footwork, works the jab and cuts angles well, hits the leg kicks, and then mixes it up with the occasional body and high kick as well. And again, submission specialist for Munoz Jr. He's got 7 of his wins are by submission, takes the back pretty quickly and efficiently, as we saw in his only UFC win about 1.5 years ago. He's coming off of the upset loss to Tony Gravely, who knocked him out, the first guy to finish Johnny Munoz Jr., so there's durability concerns there, although, Gravely's a good finisher. But, Sholinian has some question marks as well. I don't know. He's never been put out before by strikes, but at the same time, like I mentioned before the Ultimate Fighter, his career was kind of padded in a way. So this is a dangerous fight to bet. I'm going to take Johnny Munoz Jr. as the more active, effective striker. Sholinian has very basic striking. He's pretty hittable on the feet, to be honest. He can answer back with some pretty straight, fast punches, but they're not very accurate. And, a lot of his game is predicated on getting the takedown and working, in half or full guard looking for ground and pound. So that's right in the wheelhouse of Johnny Munoz Jr., a true specialist. So give me Johnny Munoz Jr. to get the decision victory here. Sholinian showed that he stayed pretty safe against some serious BJJ, submission threats, arm triangle, and I want to say there's another type of submission that Jack Shore threw his way that he defended against pretty good. So I think he got his back taken there and survived. So give me Munoz Jr. I think this does go over more often than not. Up next at women's strawweight, we've got Jinyu Frey taking on Viana. This is an interesting matchup in the way that, both women have things going for and against them here. Makes it a very close matchup, which by the odds reflecting that, Viana is the minus 125 favorite, plus 105 can be had on the underdog slightly, Jinyu Frey. So Jinyu Frey, first off, she is the much older woman here at strawweight. She's 37. Kind of pushing the limit there. She also is 5 inches shorter at 5'2", and a 65-inch reach gives up 2 inches of reach. So, that's to be expected. She is always undersized, is Jinyu Frey. She is the former atomweight champion in Invicta, where she spent most of her career. She's 11-7 in her record, which is not great. I believe she did win her last fight, which was a split decision loss to Vanessa Demopoulos. She probably deserved to have that one, but either way, she is 8-4 in decisions. And for a Muay Thai fighter, as clean and technical as she is, she only has one knockout. Again, that's reflected due to her small stature, just not getting a lot of finishing power on her strikes. Now, Viana is a little bit of the opposite, much more of a finisher. She has finished all of her wins, 12-5 record, 4 knockouts, 8 submissions for the BJJ fighter. Most of them arm bars, right? She's an arm bar from guard type of person. She does wrap up a nice triangle choke and then transition to the arm bar. In fact, 3 of her submissions in the UFC make up her 3 wins. She is 3-4 in the organization. The 3 wins that she got are all over women that are no longer in the promotion. So it's kind of a low-level test so far. She also is finisher bust, 0-4 in decisions. So if this thing sees the scorecards, historically speaking, Viana has lost the fight. So yeah, she usually is sub or bust, usually sub in round 1 or bust at that. And even 2 of the 4 women that beat her in the UFC, only 2 of them are still here, and that's JJ Aldrich and Tabitha Ricci. So the other one was Hannah Cyphers, and she's been cut as well. So Viana, she's kind of defensively lacking on the feet, like a BJJ fighter, and some other ones we'll talk about on this card. She can be kind of reckless because she doesn't mind getting taken down. She likes to work off of her back. Her footwork isn't great, but she does have some, some kind of zip to her punches, some linear striking, but just not very good defensively. And like I mentioned, the footwork doesn't help that. So she likes to work out of her active guard. Most recently, her last win was over Mallory Martin, by armbar in round 1. That was over a year and a half ago at this point. So it's been a while. 30 years old, you wouldn't expect some drastic improvements from her, although her striking has room to improve. I got to go with Frey in this fight just because of the experience, the striking technique, and striking output to win minutes. She is going to be at danger of getting submitted, but she has a lot of experience to fall back on, including the fight I mentioned at the top, which I thought she won against Vanessa Demopoulos, who's a fighter with a very similar skill set as Viana, and Jinyu Frey was able to stay safe. Just like somebody at a little bit higher level was able to stay safe against Viana, and that is Tabitha Ricci, was able to grapple, outstrike her on the feet, and stay safe, and kind of just stand up and, force the stand-up instead of going into the guard of Viana. So give me Jinyu Frey by decision here. She is at an underdog price, which is enticing in this fight, but I don't think it's worth the danger, that she could face. She could fall victim into that first-round submission. I wouldn't be the most shocked in the world. So probably no bet on this fight for me, but give me Jinyu Frey to win. Up next at bantamweight, Mario Bautista takes on the returning Benito Lopez, who I actually forgot was even in the UFC. It's been over 3 years since this guy has fought, dating back to his win over Vince Morales back in July of 2019. So it's been some time. This guy was actually riddled with injuries before that layoff. The layoffs forced him off, and I think he's pursued other careers besides MMA. So not sure why he's returning or how this came about, but he is a very exciting guy. He's got that tall Muay Thai base, pretty big for the weight class at 5'10". Mario Bautista is 5'9", and Lopez will have, I think, like 4 inches of reach on him as well. And Benito Lopez is still young, 28 years old, compared to Bautista at 29. These guys seem to match up pretty well. Their records are on point as well. 10-1 for Benito Lopez, who only had 1 submission loss in the UFC, and Mario Bautista, who has had 2 UFC losses as well and 10 wins, losing to Corey Sandhagen in his debut and then also knocked out by Trevin Jones. So, it's Mario Bautista is going to be the more explosive guy, the more free-flowing, fluid striker. He likes to throw explosive techniques, spinning attacks, jumping knees. He's kind of calmed down a bit with that and not gone completely wild. You see a more polished, more patient version of him, especially against Jay Perrin in that pretty dominant decision there where he got a lot of clinch work in and control. But he's not so much of a measured fighter where he's not himself. He doesn't have that explosive, dynamic element to his game. So he's still, live for a club and sub like he got over Brian Kelleher last time out. So he's 4-2 in the UFC as Bautista. Currently, he's like a minus 265 to minus 300 favorite. I laid down a money line bet on him at minus 235. Once I saw he was fighting Benito Lopez, who's returning after a long layoff. I kind of laid down a bet on him with a couple of units on that to win 1 unit in return. Benito Lopez is a finisher. 5 out of his 10 wins are finishes. All of those finishes were pre-UFC competition, though. He's an exciting guy. He's got good low kicks, good, pretty light on his feet, works the body at times. He's got that, that nice tall Muay Thai defense as well. I do question his durability. And especially a guy who's always been riddled with injury, like I mentioned at the top, So he used to be training at Team Alpha Male. I'm not sure if he's still there, but he would use that skill as kind of like defensive wrestling and kind of defensive submissions as well. He was an active guard type of guy, not really going for smothering top pressure or takedowns of his own. Primarily a striker. I think it's going to fit right into the wheelhouse of Bautista in this spot. Benito Lopez, if he still doesn't have the ring rust and pressures forward, he's going to be walking right into the counters of Mario Bautista, who is a very difficult guy to time. So give me Bautista. I think he does either get a submission due to like a club and sub or just a clean knockout over Benito Lopez. So give me inside the distance on Bautista here. Okay, up next at women's flyweight, we've got a match between Miranda Maverick and Shayna Young. This was scheduled for, I think, well over a month ago, but there was a weight cutting issue for Shayna Young. She was unable to continue the weight cut. Match was called off. Now it's rescheduled here, and we've got a huge favorite in Miranda Maverick, minus 600 favorite right now, plus 450 the underdog in Shayna Young. It makes sense because, in a lot of ways, Miranda Maverick, she beat her before back in Invicta. Pre-UFC, there was an exhibition match in some sort of tournament in Invicta where Maverick was able to weather the early striking storm of Shayna Young, get her down, and tap her out in round 1 by rear naked choke. 25 years old for Maverick at this point. She's 3-2 in the UFC. Very close matchup with Macy Barber. She could be 4-1 in the UFC, honestly, but 10-4 as a professional. Not the best striking. The offense is improving. The defense, in my opinion, still needs work, but she's physically tough. She has good cardio, and her takedowns are relentless, and she's actively looking for submissions. So I think she'll get it done here. Shayna Young is 8-4 as a pro, 1-2 in the UFC, coming off of her first win versus Gina Mazzani, where she actually got a stoppage. She was able to land some good lead leg side kicks in the first round. In the second round, able to strike her on the feet again, take down Gina Mazzani, and actually end up flattening her out in a back mount, raining down elbows and strikes for the stoppage. So that was nice. And I will probably give the striking to Shayna Young here. She's got, like I mentioned, some very nice kicks. I like the way she lands the kick and then uses that lead left hook and circles off with that. Not bad, but not the best footwork either for Shayna Young. And she's the submission game and takedown defense, never her forte. She was subbed already in round 1 by Maverick in the past. She was subbed by Sarah Alpar on the Contender Series. Not a very good opponent. Sarah Alpar has been out of the UFC for a while. So this is a spot where I just give the age, grappling, cardio improvements all to Miranda Maverick here. And then you top it off with Shayna Young just coming off of a canceled bout in this matchup for a weight cutting issue. It might not get much better for her even if she does make weight. So give me Miranda Maverick here. The way to play this, probably instead of parlaying her, is just looking for her inside the distance maybe is a better way to go. I do think she wins, but the money line is getting out of control. But the prop that dropped that I like was inside the distance for Maverick, plus 125, and even submission was plus 200. For a result that you've seen happen with this exact same opponent before, and you're getting a better version of Miranda Maverick here, I like that a lot. So those are the bets I'm looking to make, is the inside the distance, maybe the submission. Miranda Maverick pretty dominantly, I'd say a round 1 submission. Up next at featherweight, a very fun matchup between Derek Minner and Nuerdanbieke, two guys that love to grapple. And Derek Minner is always fun. He brings a very killer be killed style as much as anybody can. He, basically can get the job done early by submission, as he's done 22 times before, or, he gasses out just due to his frantic burst of energy in the first half of a 3-round fight. And then you never know what's going to happen. He could get TKO'd, ground and pound due to exhaustion. He could get submitted himself, which he has been like 8 times. So this is a very interesting matchup, especially when you consider Nuerdanbieke is a strong wrestler, but he's been submitted, I want to say, 6 times as well. So a lot of things fit into the game plan of the other in this fight. It'll be fun to see it shake out. Darrick Minner is the plus 170 underdog here with minus 200, the favorite price tag on Nuerdanbieke. Only 4 years separate these guys, with Sholinian at 28 years old being 4 years younger. He is 1 inch taller and giving up 2 inches of reach. So not the longest of arms for Nuerdanbieke, but he's got very strong, powerful stand-up striking, a strong left hook, which I believe dropped TJ Brown in his last fight, where he won and dominated that fight by decision. Like I said, he's a solid wrestler, and he's certainly proving that at the UFC level now. And I wonder if he's going to keep it standing with Darrick Minner, because it seems that whenever Sholinian, gets the better of a striking sequence, he will level change, and he's got smothering top pressure, but very good ground and pound as well. Very powerful ground and pound that he has ended fights with in the past. It's very lethal. He's accurate with his punches from full guard, and got some solid elbows he can rain down from like the half guard as well. So that's going to put him, in a dominant spot to win the fight, but also be at risk of Darrick Minner, who is really good at wrapping up the neck. He's got a very good guillotine, a good back take as well. A lot of that is predicated on it being early in the fight. But, you can't sleep on Darrick Minner in this spot. I think he is a live underdog, but again, I think that does have a time limit to it. I think he is fighting on a timer as usual, and he's a guy who likes to be very chaotic in the stand-up as well, because he doesn't care if he gets taken down, so he can be kind of recklessly offensive. This is a dangerous fight to bet. Fight doesn't go to decision. I'm sure that's going to have a high price tag on it, because I think that's a solid way to look at this. Fight ends in round 1 or the under 1.5. Other good ways to look at this, I think ultimately it's going to be Nuerdanbieke just has to use some common sense here and just try to wear out Darrick Minner's gas tank on the feet early. Stay safe if it does go to the ground, without taking a lot of risks of getting his limbs controlled and things like that. But Nuerdanbieke does some of those good things as well. He looks for wrist control, ties up limbs, and stays pretty safe on top. So I think he's going to wear out the gas tank of Minner early and probably get a second round TKO stoppage, maybe to Darrick Minner going for some sort of submission and then just getting his face pounded in. That has happened to Darrick Minner in the past. And give me Nuerdanbieke. Not my highest confident pick on this card. I think he does get the second round or third round finish in this fight. But I'm not going to bet this fight. I do think Darrick Minner has to be respected in this fight early. Up next at lightweight, we've got a battle between Grant Dawson and Mark Madsen, 2 guys who are very wrestling-based in their approach to mixed martial arts. Obviously, Mark Madsen, as high-level wrestling as you can get for Greco-Roman. He was a silver medalist winner in the 2016 Olympics, also competed 4 years before that with an MMA career in between. And now he's in the UFC, 4-0, 12-0 as a professional, 6 decisions, 3 submissions, and 3 knockouts. This guy has only been taken down, I think, 1 time so far. And Vince Pichel is 39 years old, Clay Guida, 40. So those 2 guys that he's beaten are the highest level, but they're older. The 2 young guys, Austin Hubbard and Danilo Gallardo, before that he beat, are no longer in the promotion. So the jury is still out on really how high level Mark Madsen is. But Grant Dawson is a guy who, even though he's 6-0 and 1 draw in the UFC, not the highest level of competition either, but he's kind of hit or miss as far as his cardio goes in the later parts of a fight, sometimes able to work through that fatigue. Sometimes his opponents are as gassed out as he is, and sometimes like Ricky Glenn was able to weather that storm, and 10-8 Grant Dawson in round 3, making that a draw. So I'm kind of sketched out by this, because the money line, even though Grant Dawson is 10 years younger, the money line is minus 225 and climbing for Grant Dawson, plus 190 going towards plus 200 for Mark Madsen. The implied probability of Grant Dawson winning a fight over an Olympian using, the same game plan he has been, which is wrestling and BJJ, it just doesn't seem to make sense for me. So I think Grant Dawson's going to struggle in this fight unless he can conserve his energy perfectly in rounds 1 and rounds 2 and wear out Mark Madsen. It's going to be an interesting fight. We would have to see an entirely different version of Grant Dawson here, one who sets up his strikes a little bit better, a little bit more defensively sound, because Mark Madsen has some good tools to counter takedown attempts, right? He's got a nice uppercut. He does have nice knees that he uses as well. The one thing that people have used against Mark Madsen are the leg kicks, so Grant Dawson could use that. He could shore up his striking a little bit. But yeah, I really think that when Grant Dawson gets tired, he's going to start diving for takedowns. He could easily get countered or reversed, end up on bottom the way he has a couple of times before. And he just seems to have trouble conserving his energy for the later parts of a fight. So I'm actually going to side with the underdog here and Mark Madsen to edge out a decision here, at least 2-1, especially winning that round 3 and just having an ability to have top pressure and active striking on top, stay safe against any of the BJJ from Grant Dawson here. This is a spot where I don't want to really back a guy at 38 years old, but the money line just gives me a lot of value on him, in my opinion. I think he's a live dog, and the more I broke down this fight, the more I realized that any credit I was giving Grant Dawson was just due to his age or due to his ability to possibly improve. But again, Grant Dawson has won every single one of his fights based on his grappling, based on his wrestling, top pressure. I've yet to see him win a fight just based off of his striking. So I'd be surprised, and I don't think that the money line supports it. So give me Mark Madsen here to pull off the upset. Okay, up next at flyweights, you've got Ulanbekov taking on Nate Maness. That's right, Nate Maness is making an additional 10-pound weight cut here. He's a guy at 5'10" and 31 years old who's fought in the past at lightweight, 155 pounds. He's fought at featherweight, most recently at bantamweight in the UFC, and now cutting again to 125 pounds. So probably important to see how he looks on the scales if he even makes it to the cage on Saturday. I'd be impressed, but he's got a lot of good attributes. But let's talk about Ulanbekov first. The Dagestani is also 31 years old, like Nate Maness. Combat Sambo background, a guy who has a very good record, only losing twice in his professional career, just like Nate Maness, 2-1 in the UFC as well. So he's got very basic striking on the feet. There's no secret to what he wants to do. He wants to take this fight to the mat and look for submissions, which he's been pretty prolific at in the past before the UFC. Now at this level, he's been all to decision results. And each time he's making the fight closer and closer than his money line indicates, right? He was a minus 455 over Bruno Silva in his debut. 29-28 decision win, pretty close decision win there, 2-1, way closer than a minus 455 money line would indicate. Minus 400 he closed that over Alan Nascimento a year ago. Split decision win. One judge called that he lost the fight. Pretty much due to not doing a lot of activity on top, getting swept, getting challenged from submissions in the bottom position. It was a split decision win. He was a minus 400 in that spot. So minus 250 earlier this year he was over Tim Elliott. Now he loses that decision pretty clearly. So this is a spot where he's, again, minus 190 a favorite here. I don't have a lot of trust in him as a favorite. I think the odds should be closer. Nate Maness has very good striking, much more advanced and powerful than Ulanbekov. He's got power, does Nate Maness, in that right hand. He's going to have a big size advantage. He sat down, what was his name? Luke Sanders with a right cross, got a club and sub victory there. Nate Maness does have some BJJ credentials, so he's good submission defense-wise as well as offense-wise. Powerful, as I mentioned, he knocked out Tony Gravely in that nice comeback victory. And, the problem for Nate Maness, of course, why he is the underdog here is he's lost this archetype of fighter before. Umar Nurmagomedov, most recently at bantamweight, controlled him for all 3 rounds with the wrestling. Nate Maness could do nothing. He's been controlled, of course, by Tony Gravely in round 1 that way as well. And the only time that Nate Maness has been finished in his career was by Taylor Lapilus. I think kicked him sidekick, heel right to the liver pre-UFC, whereas Ulanbekov has never been finished. But he's been close. He got sat down by Tim Elliott in his last fight. So whereas Tim Elliott fought a game plan I don't think Nate Maness can specifically copy as far as, unorthodox striking and, staying in his face and getting takedowns of his own, I just think Nate Maness can do more. I think he can land the better shots. Tigir does not soften up his opponents before he takes him down, doesn't employ a lot of ground strikes to get himself a submission victory, and he can take damage even from the top position. So I expect Nate Maness to make this a lot closer of a fight. I will not be betting this fight just because the power and the durability and a lot of the attributes I give to Nate Maness might be diminished at 125. We don't know. So I'm going to sit back and watch. I think Tagir needs to really prove to us that he can, live up to the minus number in front of his name, in this spot and actually look the part as a big favorite. But give me Nate Maness as a pick. I think as, an underdog goes, there's a lot worse ones on this card. Getting Nate Maness to win by decision due to activity and damage, I think can be head for like plus 300, plus 350 in this spot. So give me Nate Maness. He even has the power to end this fight inside the distance. Again, I'm taking it as a pick here. I'm not going to actually bet this fight. Up next is the fun, exciting, sloppy heavyweight fight of the card. We've got Josh Parisian taking on Chase Sherman, and this is as sloppy as it gets. The UFC used to have a tagline. Their motto back in the day used to be as real as it gets. This is as sloppy as it gets. You've got two guys that are 6'4" here. Only 1 inch separates their reach, and this is like bottom of the barrel as far as the heavyweights go. 33 years old for Josh Parisian, who has a 15-5 record. 32 for Chase Sherman, who is 16-10. I think all of those losses coming in the UFC, maybe aside from one. But Josh Parisian is now the plus 100 underdog. Chase Sherman, the minus 120 favorite. So money coming in on Chase Sherman, oddly enough, it seems. But you got to give Josh Parisian the size. He's 265.5 pounds, on the dot, just coming in pretty much right at that limit at heavyweight. Chase Sherman was 253 in his last fight against Jared Vanderaa. So both guys coming off of a stoppage win. Josh Parisian was knocked down by Alain Baudot in round 1. Back in June, he comes back and gets a round 2 stoppage via ground and pound. Chase Sherman got a round 3 knockout over Jared Vanderaa, which is the latest that Chase Sherman ever won a fight, including, decision wins. So he's never actually won a fight that went past 1.5 rounds, except for one fight, a long time ago in the UFC. He does have one decision win in the organization. But yeah, he's never actually stopped a fight after the 1.5 round mark. So that was probably not so much of an indicator of Chase Sherman improving and more of just he finally fought a guy in Jared Vanderaa, 1-6 in the UFC for Vanderaa at this point, who was worse than Chase Sherman. So the problem here is I could see Chase Sherman winning this fight in round 1 by knockout. That's possible. Equally as possible is Josh Parisian once again weathering an early storm, maybe avoiding the early knockout, and then coming back using his grappling to win this fight. Chase Sherman has been taken down in 5 of his losses in the UFC. Josh Parisian is a guy who's able to just bully forward, get the guy to the cage and then get a double leg takedown just using his sheer mass, So Josh Parisian does have a couple of good weapons in the feet, a solid jab where he gets his head off the center line, a big overhand right. These guys are heavyweights and weigh a lot. Their punches, if they land, are going to be devastating. But Parisian does use heavy leg kicks as well. But his hands kind of fall down at that point when he throws those leg kicks. He can be countered off of those. So very 50-50 fight here. I'm going to take Josh Parisian to win once again by a round 2 TKO stoppage. I think he showed in a couple of spots now that he can kind of start getting the shit kicked out of him early and then come back and win the fight. He does have some sort of ability to actually work through fatigue. I don't think Chase Sherman has that as much. It was a very slow-paced fight against Jared Vanderaa by round 3, and he just caught Vanderaa lacking. I don't see that happening here. I think Josh Parisian is either going to get knocked out early or more likely find a way to take the fight to the ground and put all of his 265.5 pounds on Chase Sherman, wear him down, and just beat his face in until the ref stops the fight. So give me Josh Parisian, round 2 knockout. Up next at 170 pounds, our co-main event, Daniel Rodriguez versus Neil Magny in a welterweight fight we were promised 3 weeks ago. Daniel Rodriguez was forced out due to a staph infection, I believe, so this is still a little bit shortly removed from his last win, a narrow split decision victory over Li Jingliang. Controversial but close fight, and that was at UFC 279. So this is maybe 2 months removed from that. Probably didn't get much quality training in that 3-week span most recently because of the staph infection. Now, Neil Magny, a little bit longer removed from his last fight, which was a loss, round 2 submission loss by Shavkat Rakhmonov, so kind of forgivable there. Neil Magny has a lot of experience going for him in this fight. 27 UFC fights at welterweight over 10 years, 19-8 record among those. The ultimate gatekeeper, Neil Magny, 16-2 in decisions. probably some of the most ring time or octagon time at welterweight. I want to say he holds the record for that. So a wealth of experience. This guy knows how to win minutes and win fights. But you got to give Daniel Rodriguez a couple things. Probably the power, the close-up boxing, and give him the durability as well. You know, he's never been finished in MMA, over 19 professional fights where he's gone 17-2. And Neil Magny has been finished in 7 of his 9 losses. So only been knocked out twice. The last time was to Ponzinibbio 4 years ago now. So this is a spot where even only the best guys are submitting Neil Magny. He's been submitted a few times, but Shavkat Rakhmonov, who seems to be unstoppable, Rafael dos Anjos, Damian Maia, to name a few of those guys who, you know, are at the top level submitting him. Now, Rodriguez in this fight, you know, before this was an even money pick'em price tag. I want to say like minus 115, minus 110 a piece. Now that it's rescheduled 3 weeks later, as often happens, you know, the bookies readjust. They're calling Neil Magny the favorite here at minus 120, minus 115. You could have found him at. D-Rod is about the plus 100 even money pick. So an interesting fight. You know, tail of the tape advantages, a half a foot of reach going in the favor of Neil Magny. 2 inches of height at 6'3" go to Neil Magny, and they're both the same age at 35. So tail of the tape and experience, that all goes to Neil Magny. The grappling, Neil Magny. The clinch work, you know, and just minute winning ability, I'd say goes to Neil Magny. And he's been in a lot of, you know, spots here where, you know, 5-round fights, headlining spots. This guy has pretty good cardio that's proven over time as well. So mix that with some striking output and activity. I like Neil Magny in this spot. You know, I had him bet before that cancellation. I don't like that I'm, you know, only getting minus 115 on him now is what I paid, but I got a couple of units on him. The Magny decision prop is the way that you would look for this, but at minus 115, where I got his money line, the decision prop for Neil Magny is only opened at like plus 125. So, you know, or I think, no, plus 120 I saw it at. So, you know, $35 on a one unit at $100. Not a big difference when, you know, Neil Magny does have a lot of the weapons to win this fight. It's not changing the price enough for me to just take a decision prop. So give me his money line for Neil Magny. I like him to win this fight. To top off my points against Daniel Rodriguez, I mean, he's 7-1 in the UFC, but the competition has not been great. Li Jingliang was a very close fight, and that was the best competition he has. His only loss was to Nicholas Dalby. You know, a frustrating, unpredictable striker, but still, it's a guy you should be able to beat. If you're facing Neil Magny anyways. Daniel Rodriguez also built up his record against guys like, you know, who am I thinking of? Mike Perry was one of his better wins. Dwight Grant from a comeback victory, one of his better wins. So, you know, just not a lot of competition on the level of that of Neil Magny. I'm not sure he's ready for this spot, so give me Magny to win this fight by decision. Okay, we've made it to the main event of the evening, a potential 5-round strawweight bout between Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos. This is a very fun fight. Both women are at the top of their prime right now at the weight class. You know, they're 35 years old, really pushing the limit for both of them here. So a win would be crucial to catapult themselves into title contention. And, yeah, they both have really good records. They size up pretty well. I mentioned the age is the same. The reach is also the same at 65 inches for these two technical strikers. And we've got 2 inches of height at 5'6" for Marina Rodriguez. Both have good records, you know. 8 fights in the UFC for Lemos, where she's gone 6-2. Marina Rodriguez has had 9 UFC fights. She's gone 6, 1 loss, and 2 draws. So this is the spot where, you know, you see the more finishing potential for Lemos. Out of her 12 victories as a professional, 10 of those are inside the distance. 7 knockouts and 3 submissions. 2 of each type of finish are in the UFC level. Marina Rodriguez, you know, not so much of a finisher, but she's shown that she can go 5 rounds a couple of times in main event spots over Mackenzie Dern and over Michelle Waterson. Pretty dominant performances for both of those. She's got proven cardio, elite striking, very active output, and good defense as well. I like a lot of things I see from her at this fight. So you've got Lemos who can, you know, have the power to change the course of the fight, even get a club and sub victory if need be. She did jump guillotine in her last fight against Michelle Waterson in round 2. And after having, you know, kind of some adversity in round 1, right? She was getting her legs kicked. She was getting pressured by Michelle Waterson and frustrated a little bit there. But she came back and jumped guillotine when she saw the opportunity in round 2. Ended the fight. Before that, she did get exposed a little bit, you know. Sometimes she can swing her hooks very wildly looking for the knockout punch. Jessica Andrade was slick enough to actually catch that. trap the arm when she overswung and get a standing arm triangle victory over Lemos, her second UFC loss besides her short notice debut. So Amanda Lemos has had a lot of finishes, but a lot of them are over low-level competition. You know, Miranda Granger, she finished by submission. She finished Montserrat Ruiz, you know, by knockout as well very quickly. So some of these are, you know, very low-level competition, not on the level of Rodriguez. You start to wonder what she's going to look like against some higher-level competition, especially later in the fight. Lemos has very good technique early on, stance switching, some good feints. You know, she keeps the hooks nice and tight, but she starts to overswing at the end of like round 2 and into round 3. Her technique really falls apart. She starts looking desperate. You don't see that from Marina Rodriguez, who she had a chance to look desperate in her fight against Yan Jiaonan. She lost round 1 pretty dominantly, but she stayed very patient. She had good technique in round 2 and round 3 and won those rounds for the split decision win. So I like the way that she can think her way out of a bad situation and show proven cardio over not only 3-round fights, but 5-round fights a couple times now. So, you know, she throws her nice crisp kicks right from the stance without a lot of wind-up or telegraphing, does Rodriguez. Very good ability in the clinch with elbows and knees. I like a lot of these things from her, and the proven cardio, as I mentioned. So give me Rodriguez here. I got her money line at minus 205, which you can still find. I put a few units on her. I was going to look for her decision prop, but it was right at plus 125, which, you know, there's a lot of unknown areas in this fight where Lemos could fall apart and get finished, right? Round 4 and round 5 where she's never been, and even against a high-level girl like Rodriguez in round 3, where I mentioned Lemos can fall apart technically. I think that's a dangerous round for her as well. So not comfortable with the decision prop there. I don't think it adds a whole lot of extra value. But, you know, I saw fight goes to decision at minus 115. Near even money for a women's strawweight fight to go to decision. You know, you're kind of getting a discount on that just because of all of the finishes on the part of Lemos here. But a lot of those, as I mentioned, were pre-UFC and against lower-level competition. So I don't see her cracking Marina Rodriguez. And if she does, I think it is before that 1.5-round mark. Now, and why I say that is because out of Lemos' 10 finishes, I think 9 of those were all before the 1.5-round mark. So that could lead to like a spot where you would look for maybe a potential live betting spot. If you get a better price than the pre-flop money line of Rodriguez and Lemos does some good work, you could add on a live bet for Rodriguez before round 2. That's a spot to look at as well. But overall, give me Rodriguez to win by decision is what I'm pretty confident in. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All 12 fights broken down for UFC Vegas 64. Marina Rodriguez taking on Amanda Lemos at women's strawweight in the main event. Not a lot of high-level fights on this card, not a lot of ranked competition, but some key spots to bet, and that's what I'm going to look for, is just those key spots I'm confident in. Hammer those this week. Stay a little bit more conservative after that parlay-busting week we had last week in UFC Vegas 63. So hopefully no more injuries this week and we get back in our winning ways. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. I'll be back on Wednesday night for the live stream. I'll see you guys there, and check out that description. The promo code Addicted to Combat 125 on BetUS for free money there, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Cheers.